and welcome to our very first Profits for Sanity podcast. I'm your host, Dominic Caminata, CEO of Gross University and industry-leading sales trainer. Before we jump into episode 1 of this amazing show, I first just want to take a second to thank all of you for watching the show and taking time out of your busy day. I know one of the most priceless things you have in your life is your time. And since the moment I've announced I'm going to be doing this show, I've been overwhelmed with nothing but positive feedback and support from people all over the home improvement industry. So my mission in launching this brand new podcast is very simple: to provide owners and leaders just like you with priceless information you can use right now to run a more profitable business. So my coach and mentor at Gross University was always famous for saying, in the world of business, volume is for vanity and profit is for sanity. And profitability obviously stems from everything you're doing in your business and in your personal life, ultimately to command a more profitable team. With that in mind, the guests we're going to be bringing on every single week are going to be among the elite business owners and entrepreneurs who understand exactly what it takes to run the most profitable and high-performance companies in the world, and also allowing you to keep your pulse on this ever-changing and dynamic industry. My very first guest on the Profits for Sanity podcast is not only a mentor of mine and one of the most knowledgeable people I've ever met, especially in the field of health and wellness and regenerative therapy, but I'm also honored to call him a very close friend of mine. Today we're talking to Dr. InJun Chong, who's the owner and founder of Reveal Wellness and the mastermind behind the Rich Life program, which I'm excited to dive deep into this on this podcast here. This is something near and dear to his heart. And Dr. InJun Chong has literally dedicated his entire life to helping owners and leaders just like yourself unlock your true genetic potential. And those of you watching this, the first thing I want to explain to you is you are truly twice as good as you think you are, and that's only half the truth. And that's only part of the story. And Dr. InJun is certainly one of those gentlemen that I want you to bring into your life that can truly show you the path to realize your true potential and enhance your life in every regard. So I just want to say thank you for being my very first guest on the podcast here. I'm very excited to have this conversation. So we all know that you lead and you perform proportionate to how you feel and how you function. And that's a very important word for Dr. InJun here is function. But if you don't mind, just explain a little bit about your credentials, your experience in the field of regenerative therapy, health and wellness, and kind of the services you provide at Reveal Wellness.
I'm blessed to be here today.
Yeah, thank you.
But to share that, so thank you for the friendship, number one, and thank you for the opportunity.
Awesome.
Because this is a privilege to me as well, and I look to you as a mentor as well, especially in this space. Being in health and wellness, we don't typically stream out into these other things, and you're seeing it more and more now, but typically it was always just working patient one-on-one and not getting out to the masses. So I had to make a change in my career path because I had been trained as a chiropractor for 22 years. And as many people may know or may not know, a chiropractor is someone that spends time using their hands to make corrections to a person's spine to help enhance their health or vitality and to restore function of their nervous system, right? The nervous system runs and regulates everything. So that was my base, my foundation. But then due to some injuries and trauma that I experienced in an accident, it caused me to have to shift gears and to be able to modify to my environment, which was the damage that had occurred to my health and wellness. So in doing that, I had to shift gears and figure out how can I utilize what I experienced to bring to other people to help enrich their lives. And so as we do with everything in life, I believe your history is the same. You had a personal experience, you took those experiences and then took them out to help other people that might have been in that situation or currently in that situation. So with myself being in that position, I had to help regenerate my body after the broken bones I sustained in a boating accident to go back into chiropractic. Once I did that, though, I realized that I was exchanging my health for wealth. It didn't make much sense. So I took some self-reflection saying, what am I doing? Like, what is the message of this accident? What was the purpose of that? And it was to make me pay attention. Where's my health and my life headed if I follow this current path of banging myself up and then having to get regenerative therapy over and over again? Is reverse formula. So you can't exchange your health for wealth. And as I found, and people come through your life for a reason, I had a lot of very wealthy people come in and out of my life throughout the years and have experience helping them with their health. And one thing they share with me that I didn't pay attention to at the time when I had met them is that if they were to live, if they knew they were going to live this long, they would have taken better care of themselves.
Yep.
And these are very financially wealthy people, men and women. And so I thought to myself, well, that's really interesting as I start to go through this aging process and go through the challenges to figure out what is the path that was designed for me. And so then when I shifted gears, I said, there's a way we have to look at life maybe a little differently than I've been looking at it. And I was going after the wealth, so I could experience the wonderful material things that they were enjoying and the vacations and those things that I didn't get to experience in my childhood. Parents both coming from factory background. that encouraged me to want to go into something where I didn't have to punch a time clock or work for hours. So with that being said, the biggest thing was to say, how do I provide something to help other people, right? That's how the Rich Life came into play, the acronym, because the first thing when people think about the word rich, they're thinking about finances, thinking about money, material things. And I was doing the same thing. I thought the same thing as well. But what I found when I got to spend time with these very financially wealthy people, behind the curtain was so many different things that were not very rich, and that I'd never exchanged my life for. So I had to figure out, how do we weave this into something better, a different definition of what rich really means.
This is why I felt it was important to kick off this podcast with your message, because I personally know, and those of you watching probably know, many people that seem very well off financially, but live very toxic lives. They're miserable human beings. They got broken relationships. Their kids resent them. And as a result, on paper, financially, the profit looks all fine and dandy, but personally, everything else is in shambles. And that's not at all what it takes to live a truly fulfilling, gratifying, and rich life. And that's why I think your message couldn't be more timely to be in our first episode. Everything in your life stems from how you're functioning, how you're performing. And with Dr. InJun's guidance, he's going to show you very easily how you can truly unlock your full potential. So you talked about, your inspiration. I know that's one of the keys of your rich life is your inspiration, influences in life. And you had mentioned it literally took you getting this horrific boating accident. And what exactly happened? You shattered your wrist?
Yeah, I fractured my wrist here. And as you know, a chiropractor uses their hands for their adjustments and things that they do. And then I fractured my arm in that boating accident.
Yeah. And that was your wake-up call. Yeah. It'd be like, maybe I should be going down a different path in my life. So that's not normal. Some people get hurt in a boating accident, and when they recover, they just go down the same destructive path anyway,
Well, I was headed that direction, actually. So that was one wake-up call. The second wake-up call was my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. So then I had to shift gears and go back to the individual cell and saying, what is going on that I missed this? As a doctor, my sister being a doctor as well, we both got together and saying, what did we miss? So then if I cannot take care of my mother, how am I qualified to take care of other people's health? So I could help them with their spine, their structure, their aches and pains, but there's so much more than that. Those are just symptoms.
Yeah.
Let's see how things are functioning. How are the cells adapting to their environment? So that goes down that path with this whole rich life concept of how is the body adapting to its everyday stressors?
Yeah.
Right. So chiropractic was one stress, was a physical stress, but it wasn't addressing the other components, which is emotional stress and chemical stress. The things we're eating and drinking.
And the owners and leaders watching this don't go through any stress in their day-to-day operation, right?
Yeah.
So this is a very stressful and in a lot of cases a very toxic industry. I know many owners that burn the candle at both ends, and as a result, they had successful businesses, but they weren't able to enjoy it. Just because their health took a tank, and then they're obviously not able to continue doing what they're doing. But that's the whole name of this game, and what he's talking about is none of this stuff just happens overnight. So a lot of times, if you have a significant other or someone in your life close to you that gets cancer or gets heart disease and all these other common ailments that people are going with right now, these diseases, there's ways you can be proactive and get ahead of the game on this stuff. And this is what Dr. InJun he's absolutely mastered. If you want to work with somebody that can help you get ahead of the game, see if there's any check engine lights on. I'll tell you that me personally had to take some tests with Dr. InJun, and I had some check engine lights I had no idea even existed. And I consider myself to be a pretty healthy individual. I'm only 37 years old. I work out. I try to eat healthy. I literally grow my own eggs on my own little farmette out there in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. If there's anything you take away from this, be proactive about your health before it's too late. Why do people even care about health and wellness as it pertains to profits for Sanity? How can my personal health and wellness help me run a more profitable business?
If a person is not sane and insane, it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
Right. So like you said before, many times I've heard you say is be the shining star, not the shooting star. And often happens times we're looking for that quick burst, but it's not sustainable over the long term. And I've been blessed to work with a lot of professional athletes. And the one thing they tell me is the training they go through, it's consistently over a period of time making those choices and having the opportunity to then be able to adapt to those environments when they go into the game. So when they're doing their practice stuff, this is getting ready and prepared for the game. So they have reserve in the tank, if you will, to be able to adapt to something that might present itself that's out of the ordinary. The sales professional, I work with the car industry for sales leadership and also real estate. And every sales professional, if they were to look at their profession as a profession, not a job, and be an advisor, they want to be that person that can go in there that's already been conditioned in a way that they can mentally be able to have the endurance and the wherewithal to be able to lead that customer and to be the best advisor for them. And I call it influence, because at the end of the day, when you influence, and like Brad Lee says all the time, the more hands you shake, the more money you make, right? So influencing people will then give you the income that you're desiring. So then you have that as a resource to live an abundant life, a rich life. And then it can lead to all those other material things. So the answer to your question more specifically, without that long explanation there, is that so you have sustainability.
Yep.
If you don't have sustainability, you're going to end up having all these different conditions develop. And you won't function at your optimal or your peak potential, and that's what we're looking for is optimal performance. And you should want that with your sales associates, optimal performance of their potential.
Yep. I actually define a leader as an agent of influence that can navigate their team to a clearly defined destination. So that's how I define a leader, which is very similar to the definition of a salesperson, because of course they're agents of influence as well. But when you are in a leadership role, you own a business, you run a company, you run a team, whether it's sales, marketing, production, operations, really doesn't matter what team. The best possible way for you to lead is by example. Plain and simple. Take all the leadership books, mash them together. Leading by example is by far the most effective thing, because when you're in a leadership role, you're always on parade. So the reason why this is important is if I desire a high performance sales team, sales warriors that are healthy, that are well, that are shining stars, that can go out there and kick ass and take names, I need to lead by example. And I got personal stories of this because I've done a little bodybuilding. I've done 3 competitions, just amateur bodybuilding competitions here in Wisconsin. And it was amazing to me when I was a sales leader and I was getting in shape for bodybuilding, all of a sudden I noticed that all my sales team, they were eating better, they weren't drinking as much, they were meal prepping, they were weighing their food for crying out loud, tracking their macros. And as a result, sales soared. Because you sell and perform proportionate to how you feel, how you're functioning, right? So this whole topic of health and wellness, I don't think there really is a more important thing to talk about for you to command and lead a profitable team, a high performance organization. It's going to require that you yourself are performing at that optimal level. So you got a couple things on this agenda. We got the qualifications, self-reflection, the rich life, and of course, breaking barriers. And you already introduced yourself. Now, who are some of the athletes that you've done work with? Some of the professional?
Hall of Famer, just recently Hall of Famer, Joe Thomas. He played for the Browns. He was a Badger football player. And then also Chris Borland, he played for the 49ers. I'm currently taking care of Jake McCabe. He played for the Blackhawks. He's a hockey player. I started off my profession with the Diamondbacks back in 2002. You know, the thing working with these athletes is the discipline that I observe with these athletes. And I think that's what the sales professional, when you're a professional, you are disciplined. So like you're talking about your team, when you structure and plan your day, then you are in the driver's seat for other things that come at you, and you can adapt and modify without glitching you out or setting you off of your vision or where you're headed, your path, if you will. So working with, you know, just those handful of people there, it was interesting that the commonality they had was discipline.
Yep.
And they have a system and structure, just like your programs, to help give the raw material to these individuals to put into play. But it's up to those individuals to utilize them, right? To be disciplined enough to follow that program or that system.
I think what's impressive about that, you know, I think the three hardest words for people to say is "I need help," right? So these people, of course, know that they had an injury. They're like, "Yeah, I need to take care of myself." But why is it important to have that moment of self-reflection? And I guess what do you encourage these people to reflect on?
Well, just like your business, when you're doing the measurements, and that's what we were saying before about having those measuring sticks of saying, if I do not measure something, I'm unable to manage it. So I cannot put a path together or put a plan together to get there. So I had to have those checkpoints along the way. The same thing with yourself, is checking in with yourself occasionally, saying, am I on task to reaching and exceeding the goals that I put into place? And do I need to course correct? And reflection to come into saying, you know, where are you currently at? And are you heading the direction you want to go? Because that's really the definition of stress. When there's a misalignment of what you truly beliefs are and participating in something that's not in alignment with that. That's the really definition of stress and the body's ability to adapt to that. And then we roll over to the definition of health. the body's ability to adapt to the environment. So self-reflection is basically a check-in on yourself. Any professional team, and we're not talking about, even have to talk about professional sports, but any professional organization, they have their members or their advisors, if you will, going through and saying, where am I ranking myself in my personal life? Where am I ranking myself in my professional life? Where am I ranking myself in my financial life? And then going through those and ranking those and putting a number to it. So 0 to 10. 10's optimal, where your goals are, and then where you feel that you've completed and you've attained what you're seeking. And then 0 is nothing at all. You have not made any change at all. And I think we should continuously evolve. And the last couple of years has really proven that to us, that we have to continue to evolve. And that's really what health is the same thing. It's evolving and adapting to our environment. And when we're conditioned, our cells are conditioned to do that, we can acquire and achieve those things. So ranking those things with your personal health, your professional health, your financial health, those are just 3 categories. You can tally up a lot more, but that's just some basic general things to say, where am I at currently?
So when you're doing this exercise with people and you're saying rate your personal health, I guess what's the most common numbers you get from clients?
When they're being completely honest, they're usually about a 5 or less.
So I would rate myself about a 6 right now. Even though, I'm starting to get back into it, I'm realizing some results, but I'm still nowhere near where I'd like to be, where I would call optimal. 6, maybe 6.5, I don't know. But, if we're being honest with ourselves, like you said, maybe a 5 or a 6. And I probably rarely get anybody saying 8 or 9, right? Oh, probably never.
Usually not. And if they're being completely honest.
Yeah.
And the way that we measure it of saying, really, how are we adapting? Because if we take a reference saying, I'm 47 years old. I'm okay to say my age. I'm 47. So if I had to compare myself when I was in my 20s, thinking, have I continue to evolve, or am I going the other direction? Because we got health here and sickness here. What direction am I going?
Yeah.
Right. And the way that I gauge that is by my ability to do what I want to do as far as functionality. That's why I use function all the time. It's not how you feel. Because I have people feeling great all the time, and all of a sudden you hear about they died of a heart attack. How well were they functioning at that point? How well were their cells functioning? How well were their organs adapting and working with one another? And that's where we measure things, so then we can manage them to see where we're really at. So we have a true, subjective is what you put down, and objectively I put these results together, and now we pair them up to see how far off are we.
It's not like everyone gets a heart attack and then has a second chance to fix it. A lot of times that first heart attack is the heart attack, right? I mean, that's the one that takes them out.
And so unfortunately, even when we do the typical serum testing, we do typical blood testing, when they're measuring those results, they're measuring them to a conglomeration of a sick population. So we pool all these people together, and that's how we figure out if they're within normal limits, is the phrase they typically share with you, when there's nothing that's significantly higher outside that norm. And unfortunately, I don't want to be within normal limits of a sick population. I want to be at optimal levels. And so the testing is much different. When you look at, you can Google that, the way the terrain they use to identify if you're healthy, or your blood levels or your blood labs or your labs are healthy, that's how they're really measuring that, you guys. And so the important part about this thing, I want to be at optimal levels, and we cannot use sick population to identify that.
The message I want to convey is, there are simple things you can do proactively so you don't have to worry about this stuff. There are ways you can know how you're trending. There are ways you can know, even if you feel okay, if something is going wrong. And it's amazing. I joke about this with my dad all the time, because obviously I'm trying to get on his case about taking a look into his health and wellness. But he'll go out there, he'll spend $1,500 on a new set of tires for his truck in 2 seconds, but he won't take the time to invest a couple $100 to run a test to see what's going on with his life, with his body. And putting your health and well-being as a priority, you can still enjoy the things you enjoy and still, have the nice dinners and have a glass of wine and indulge, have your pleasures in life. But there's simple things you can do to be proactive about your health, and simple lifestyle things you can weave into your personal life. So again, this is not something that's in the back of your mind. You know where you are, where you're at. You say, don't guess, test.
Absolutely right.
Never guess, test. Actually take the time to see what actually is going on. And for me, it was very liberating. It gives me peace of mind having more knowledge as to what is going on, so I can take the right steps and be proactive. And there's no limit to, a guy like InJun, all the way down to, taking DNA and for your exact genome and genetic makeup, figuring out exactly what you need to be doing to optimize your performance. And you've done that as of recently. You were telling me some case studies.
It's been really interesting to be able to have patients come in that have had some genetic testing done, we could see what their tendencies would be based on their genetic profile, and that's an unarguable thing. Your genes are your genes, and so that leads us to determine whether or not you may be triggered by certain things or where your cells might be dysfunctional. And I've had just recently, I had a call this morning, a lab review with an individual that's, they own a large marina, they own boat sales, they own a campground, and he's under a large amount of stress. And he'd come to me, and he was an athlete for a while as well, and he said, I'm just having a tough time. They put me on these antidepressant drugs to minimize these things and try to help, and it's not really helping. I'm gaining some weight, having no energy, having a lot of conflict. And I said, let's just do some testing to see what the baseline is. So we have a way to kind of blend in there to see if we can make some course correction, some modifications. And so we started out with the genetic testing. We did DNA testing with him. It was a really simple collection. He just did inside his mouth a buccal swab, sent it to a lab, they send the results back, and then we can go ahead and go through the differentiation of what's going on and what his tendencies would be. And we found out that his tendencies of some of the pathways of we call neurotransmitters, those are things that plug in the circuits so that the brain functions the way it's supposed to, and then you can obviously function cognitively the way you're supposed to. And he had a lot of what we call SNPs, and those things were causing some dysfunction, which was causing him to have these different states, emotional states, that he was unable to manage correctly. And if they had done those tests prior to giving him the prescription drugs, we would have been able to better manage these things by some lifestyle changes, and also using the correct supplementation, giving his body the right nutrients that it needed for it to then bypass some of those pathways that were turned on based on his genome. And now it's been defined clearly that we have an ability to turn on or off our genes based on the environment we provide. So I always tell people, you are the host to the party. And what that means is the decisions you make determine how your body is going to be responding to those resources or raw materials. Almost like when you recommend certain materials for a home builder. Depending upon the materials you offer them will determine what kind of finished product they will have, and how it can sustain the time of the abuse it'll have from the weather.
This is a great analogy. We talk about that all the time in our sales process. You can have the best product ever made, but if it's not installed right and it has inferior materials to hold it together, it's going to fail.
Yeah.
So.
And that's really how the health comes in. And there again, going back to the individual cell, we have to see how these cells are functioning so then we can determine how the human being or the host is going to function.
And that's opposite of what the typical health model is, because it's like, let's prescribe this one drug for 100% of everyone, and that's where people run into trouble. Whereas what we're talking about here is once you understand your genetic makeup and who you are, then there's a lot of natural things that can be done that don't involve necessarily drugs. It's just simple lifestyle modifications, and then you don't have to worry about it. And we're talking about, cures too, like curing certain things versus just trying to throw drugs at the symptoms, right? What's going on, closers? Dominic Caminata here, owner of Gross University and industry-leading sales trainer. Are you looking for a way to provide world-class sales training for your team that is literally guaranteed to build the highest performing sales professionals in the industry? We are pleased to announce our all-new Gross University 60-day challenge that can help you accomplish just that. Our Sales Academy is quickly becoming the most turnkey and powerful way for companies all over the country to build top-performing sales talent, and we're ready to prove it to you. For the first time ever, we are inviting companies nationwide to enroll a salesperson and a sales leader into our next Sales Academy Masterclass absolutely free. Our team of legendary trainers will take them through our comprehensive 2-week sales training where every student will be tested and certified as a sales warrior. After the live training event, every sales warrior will also receive a full 60-day trial access to all of our Sales Academy Masterclass services, which will give them access to our industry-leading online sales training platform, access to our live weekly sales meetings from our certified coaches, and one-on-one product-specific training and support to guarantee that every salesperson truly turns into a shining star in the industry. The best part is you can experience all of this training absolutely free with no obligation. Once you see the results for yourself, you understand why Gross University is quickly becoming the #1 sales training program in the industry. Schedule a call today with one of our representatives and learn how Gross University can easily become the sales training arm of your business and take your company to the next level. Thank you for watching. On behalf of Gross University, yes, you are a closer. Well, let's dive into the rich life here a little bit. So you created this acronym, RICH, and what does that stand for?
Relationships, influence, contribution, and health. It's a four-legged stool. So I created that acronym to basically be the foundation for you to experience a greater quality life and what I've termed a rich life. So it's not based on just finance.
Now, in here you have relationships. What do you mean by relationships?
Yeah, part of it being real with yourself. What is the relationship you have with yourself? Because that is the determining factor of how you live your life and how your relationships are with those other people, whether they're colleagues or your intimate relationships with your significant other or your children. And so if there's things that are going on between your ears about yourself, you're not really truly able to give the best version of yourself. You're almost like a secret identity, if you will. Right? Many people have a role, for example, like a lot of my colleagues, they're a doctor. So then they have this stigma, they think what a doctor is supposed to be doing or what they're supposed to be appearing as. At the end of the day, we're all just humans. We spend our time in certain different things of interest to us, and now we are the person to be the advisor to help other people to minimize their time. So you can invest all your time into the business sector that you enjoy, and I can invest my time in things, and we come together and we share those things and collaborate, right? And unfortunately, many people walk around with this imposter syndrome, but they don't really know who they are. So how can they have a genuine relationship with themselves? Because they're lying to themselves in the very beginning. So how can they be a blessing and truly enjoy a quality life? And then oftentimes they get to their life and say, was my life wrong? I think Wayne Dyer said something like that at one point. What if you get to the end of your life and realize your life was wrong?
I can't imagine that feeling.
Right? So that's the core is the R of the real relationships.
Just your personal and professional relationships. How is your relationship with your coworkers, the people that you're commanding and leading each and every day? Do you have good, strong relationships? I think one thing that leaders run a problem is they think they have power and authority over people. I don't think that that's the right approach. You don't have any more power and authority than anyone. You play your role and your mission in life and your business, and everyone else plays their role. The more you can make the people around you feel important, feel valued, give them a sense of purpose and fulfillment and inspire them. I let them know that I see them, I see their value as a person, and I'm not talking down to them. They're on the same level that I am. Yeah, they have a different role within my business, but I want them to feel just as important as anybody else in my business, including me, right? Yeah. But I want to have a legacy. And that's one thing that I'm sure a lot of you leaders are thinking about. What legacy are you going to leave behind? Correct. And if you neglect your relationships, the answer is you won't have one.
So. I did a really cool exercise at chiropractic school. Our last, we called trimester. So we didn't have semesters, we had trimesters. We had 3 trimesters in a year as opposed to 2 semesters in a typical college curriculum. And one of our assignments was to write our own eulogy.
Yeah.
And it rolls us right into the next letter of influence.
Yeah.
But it glides into what you just said before about that relationship, what impact you want to make to be a positive influence in other people's lives. So every person we come across, we should leave them better than we found them. And that's one thing that's really amazing that we have the chance to do even today. When you and I met, we never knew that we'd be sitting here doing this, right? So every time we have an opportunity to come in contact with somebody, there's a reason they were put in our path. And if we choose to really look at that and saying, what is the opportunity here? And we're given these opportunities all the time, and oftentimes we just blast right past them. The same as you're saying about relationship with employees. You look at that opportunity and take it for granted. When it's gone, and these are maybe the individuals that could have been at a certain potential, if they had that nurture or that value added to them when you had the relationship with them, who knows where things can go.
This is something I commonly talk about in my sales training because, of course, salespeople are trying to influence their prospects in the direction in which they want them to go. And part of your success in doing that is making that homeowner feel understood, feel special. If you just simply lived your life treating every person as if they're the most important person in the world, that alone will literally slingshot you forward in success and prosperity faster than just about anything.
But that's a professional because it makes people curious because they're not typically treated that way. So they have interaction with people. That's not the norm. So when you do that, you are that shining star. And it's another segue there. Leads right into contribution. Yeah. It really does, is because they're using other people's achievements, just like the 4-minute mile. When I'm like, no, I can run that. And then all of a sudden somebody does it. So like, well, we can do that too then. The same thing. And then going back and contributing to other people to encourage them to be their cheerleader. The same thing like you're talking. Yeah. Watching those videos help encourage and visualize to you that I can do that. It's possible.
Yeah. Contribution is huge because, you see a lot of people have overnight wealth, whether it's a professional athlete, a movie star. But part of the reason people don't have fulfillment in life is because they're selfish. They're only about themselves. part of what brings fulfillment and gratification in life is the impact you can have on other people, the contribution to this world. So I think the more you can contribute to the success, this is why I love sales training. I literally have the ability to give someone this gift, this knowledge, this education, which is just ideas and information from my brain, and it literally can transform their life overnight. They'll never forget that. You made that impact on their life, that gift will carry with them forever after. That's contribution. For me, that's fulfillment. And I was always smiling ear to ear going to sales trainings because I knew that that was my opportunity to have a major impact on other people's lives and contribute. Now, you gave a definition of health, but why do you feel that, of all the pillars, that health is definitely one of the most important ones?
Without your health, you're not able to do the things we're speaking of.
Yeah.
Right? So your mental health, your physical health, and really the part of the whole factor is making sure your body's adapting to the stressors of life. And that's where the definition, if you look it up, it's really the body's ability to adapt to its environment so it can sustain all the things that come at you or you're experiencing in life. And so without that, we have nothing.
So I love that you say that mental health there, because I think a lot of people, when they think health and wellness, they tend to think about their body. And you can have that influence too. You start taking care of your temple, start taking care of your mind and your body. You can be that inspiration for others, that influence for others to also do the same. So you can't neglect any of these steps in his Rich Life program, because then, again, it comes all full circle. It's only as strong as its weakest link, right?
100%. To tie it up together is the foundation of the health, and that's where I come into. But I know there's other factors play into that, and they all weave in together to have that stability and sustainability. And when we go into the last component, the one thing I wanted to add with it is, they call it mental health, but it's really brain health. Because if I go back and look at it at a cell level, because people think mental health, like, maybe something, they use that phrase or term mental health, like, well, that person's creating things because of their thoughts. Well, part of that's true. But if the chemistry is off, that individual is having a very tough time to overpower the chemistry with the thinking. There's very, very few people that can do that. It takes a lot of practice to try to override that. But still, what will end up happening is even if they do override it, the cells will still dysfunction unless it's addressed correctly. And what will happen is that affects all the other organ systems in the body.
Yeah, and this is one thing you really, opened my eyes to, because I'm really big into self-help books and mindset books and all this stuff. And I'm trying to force this information in my head to change my neurology or my brain or whatever you want to call it. But you can read all the self-help books in the world and do your damnedest to be in the right state of mind. But to your point, if you're misfiring, if your neurons are not functioning at the optimal level, you're still limited as to what you're going to be able to accomplish with the right mindset. And your clarity of thought and your reflex responses and your attitude, your ability to manage stress, all those things are restricted. So there are things outside of just reading a self-help book. Although I am a huge fan, I think you should read the right self-help book 10 times and truly ingrain it and live it and experience it. But there's other things also that you need to be mindful of to make sure that information you're digesting and processing, you're able to put to action and reap the rewards as a result. So
without a shadow of a doubt, and not only that, but it then drives hormones too. So if the hormones are out, we're having these guys are, they're gaining weight, their body changing, their vitality, their drive, their will, all that stuff is affected because of brain health and because of the neurology and some of the chemicals that are being altered. And oftentimes it's DNA based, like my client this morning. And they were unaware of that, nor was their medical doctor aware of that because they didn't do those testings. They didn't do that measurement. And so our goal, my goal at least with you, is to give you the opportunity to do those things and do them in the comfort of your own home even. Where there's not the painful going in and having a blood draw, for example. There's ways now with technology that we can do different testing that I can send tests all over the country to you, and you can do it in the privacy of your own home and send it directly to the lab. And the lab does all the work and gives me the information, and I just translate it to you and then give you a plan of action on how to course correct to minimize the toxicities and take care of the deficiencies that the cells may be experiencing.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And it couldn't be, more easy to get this information. Again, this is not some daunting thing, some scary thing that you have to jump into. I love the fact that you can do it from your own home and you get the results back pretty damn quick. I mean, usually within a week or two, you know exactly where you're at. And then you have the expert over here that can translate that information for you and tell you exactly what's going on. And then together you work on the pathway forward to move in the right direction. So again, I just think that's a gift. So you have some scary statistics on here because fear of loss is a good motivator. Let's just be honest.
Yeah. The part that goes back to sanity too, and having that that clear understanding so we can be going into our life choices with some sanity and not being insane and just turning a blind cheek to it, right?
Yeah.
Or blind eye, where the phrase goes, but basically turning your head and looking the other way. It's not going to go away, I promise you that.
Yeah. So you have a couple things. What percentage of the U.S. population is considered obese?
Good majority. I think we're almost like 75% now.
75%.
Yeah, and the terminology changes a little bit based on where you're getting the definition from, but it's a high number.
Now, you were talking about statistics on cancer, and again, I just want to be the first to apologize if anyone has cancer or if anyone knows a loved one that's battling it right now. Obviously, our condolences, our prayers are out for you. But I think it's important for people to understand just how common this is, and you're not alone. When you told me these statistics, I was floored by it, but it makes sense. So what are the statistics on cancer right now?
1 in 3 will get diagnosed. 2 out of the 3 will pass. That'll be what takes their life. And I was very fearful. Like I said, that made that huge shift for me to look away from the structure, the chiropractic structure's function, but just the cells, and getting into regenerative therapy, and now going into some of the restorative lifestyle modifications with supplementation and some of the things that people are doing as far as the environment they're providing as far as their chemistry goes. So that led me down the path I'm at now with cell health and really helping curtail that. But like I said, firsthand, I experienced my mother, and I thought, I was going to lose her. So it was a very transformative reflection for me of where I need to be, and that's why I'm sitting where I'm at right now.
So you're saying over 33% of the country, the people in this country, will at some point in their life get diagnosed, and then what you're saying is about half of those people that are diagnosed will pass away from cancer.
Yeah, or complications of cancer.
Yeah. So again, this is not a joke. It's not funny.
It's real.
It's the real deal, and this is why I think it's important that we get this message out, because I know for a fact that in our industry, you could probably take those percentages, and they're probably even higher, just because of the stresses and how toxic. And again, we tend to burn the candle at all ends. And, something near and dear to my heart is making sure that the people I'm training and the people I'm consulting would take care of themselves. I want to build a long relationship with the people watching. I want to, the salespeople, I want them to be shining stars, to make a long-lasting career. This is a marathon, not a race. And I see too many people. And again, I've had people in my personal lives. So I lost one of my uncles, 49 years old. If you looked at the guy worked his ass off, was healthy as an ox, strong, just mean, just an animal. He passed at 49 years old from pancreatic cancer. And literally, once he got diagnosed, it was like 4 months later. It was so fast, and it was heartbreaking. It was just a catastrophic event. But to InJun's point, this is why, for me, when I train salespeople and owners, this is something I take very seriously, because, we've all experienced loss and tragedy. But, it only takes a couple of those situations for you to wake up and realize, this has to be a priority. I don't care what I'm doing. I don't care what I'm training on. Step one is, let's take care of your body and mind. And then everything else, it'll trickle down to everything else you're doing. So the first part of my sales training is preparation. And a big part of preparation is health and wellness. Because you sell and are able to influence proportion to how you feel. And the best salespeople in the world are also fanatical about their health and well-being, and that's just a fact.
Well, they're optimized,
yeah,
and that's what we're looking to do. And like you were suggesting here about how this all ties into, the cancer and the statistics on death. The biggest thing, you guys, is the start of every pathology is stress, and stress causes inflammation. Inflammation of your cells then triggers a whole response, depending on what pathway you're going to be more prone to with your genetics as a contributing factor oftentimes. But it will lead down to what that diagnosis becomes. So at the end of the day, if we wanted to sum it all up, it's stress. How is your body managing and dealing with stress? And that will determine what pathway that your story is going to end at. Right? So I don't care if it's cancer, heart disease, diabetes, whatever it might be, it's starting off with stress, and it comes down to cell inflammation. So the only way you know if the cells are inflamed is testing them to see what's going on. So this is not to try to sell you on anything, but it's really to help you understand and not be insane. Really being sane and thinking
keep your sanity.
Keep the sanity, but thinking out in ways of being realistic. And definition of insanity, doing the same thing and expecting different results. Right? So we don't do that anymore.
So now one thing you have on the list here for some health issues is addiction. Salespeople, especially top performers, type A personality, they tend to have addictive personalities too. And there's a lot of things they get addicted to. You know, I've talked to salespeople that say, I have to have 6 beers before I go to bed every night in order to sleep. Or obviously the addiction to caffeine is unreal. I mean, the energy companies love the profession of sales because these people are pounding energy drinks like you wouldn't believe. So I guess, how can you speak to addiction? You know, what causes that? And, you know, obviously everyone is in a different stage of what they're addicted to or what they would classify as addiction. Maybe it's smoking. I guess, what causes that addiction, and what are some things a salesperson or an owner or leader can do to try to unravel that and move away from that dependency on those things? Because it kind of takes control of your life, you know? So we've seen a lot of people that they kind of destroy their lives over these addictions very quickly. So.
Sad but true. Mm-hmm. Chemical addictions are driven by hormones. Mm-hmm. Then the behaviors follow suit, so now it becomes a habit. Mm-hmm. Every time you have a sale, for example, or we win a race, or we do something where we have some sort of win, we get a dopamine release. And it's a healthy thing. It's an encouraging thing and embraces it. However, when we become addicted to those things, we then tend to look for other things to get the same response. And then we'll have the opposite effect if we don't achieve those things. Mm-hmm. So it causes our body then, those neurotransmitters I spoke of before, to have an effect downstream on the hormones. Mm-hmm. And that's what drives everything. And when the hormones get dysregulated, then we cause that negative feedback where the behavior then continues, seeking the same result or the same feeling.
Yeah. This is why we see in sales, it's a huge up and down roller coaster, because in the profession of sales and in leadership, when you're hot, you're hot. When you're not, you're not. You'll see a sales rep that goes 0 for 5 and they literally are considering driving into oncoming traffic because they're so down on themselves because they didn't get that dopamine rush or the neurotransmitters are all shot.
Reward.
And then, you know, a sales rep, I've seen a sales rep go 40 sales in a row, 40 in a row. And you talk about, you know, the dopamine hits that salesperson was getting on cloud 9. And, you know, that's dangerous though, because now you're so dependent on that dopamine rush that when you don't have it, the downs and the lows and that negative cloud that's around you is so severe, it causes extreme depression, anxiety, stress. I mean, and again, the root cause of all this goes back to stress. You know, what are some things you've seen that are effective in order to manage that and hopefully get away from the grip of these addictions? I guess, what are some tips you can give the audience there?
The one thing I found most recently, and you'll see this more, and you'll see this term used a lot more, it's called MTHFR. It's a methylation, what we call dysregulation. Genetically, about 60% of the population they're finding now have this mutation. Their body's inability to methylate, which means is basically digest these chemicals and they'll float in our bloodstream and we'll have these neurological responses. And so if you don't have this conversion, it's not being converted correctly, then you have this issue where you're having the constant need for those stimulants to have that a level of sanity or what you think to be sane. And unfortunately, it causes other things to occur downstream, like I said. So first off, getting tested. See what your tendencies might be. So if you have these genetic mutations with methylation, that's something you want to be concerned with. And then we can address those things if you are, so we can supplement or substitute those things versus the caffeine, whether it's coffee, energy drinks, cocaine, whatever it is to give you that rush or that stimulation. Because what happens is in the sales, and then all the sales professionals I work with, whether it's the automotive industry or real estate, is that they're going from 0 to 0 every month. The numbers, the board changes every month, and so they're chasing those numbers every single month. So there's going to be that transcending up and down, up and down. So how do we better manage that cognitively for brain health if we don't know if there's maybe some underlying tendencies they have genetically to be able to cope with those things? Because their body is going to crave that stimulant then.
Yep. Yeah, and that's important. And I always say in sales, you got to try to stay even keel, because if you have these highs and lows, you can only withstand that so long before one of those takes you out. And of course, weight gain, we all know when people get into sales or leadership roles, they tend to gain the freshman 50, and Lord knows I've been guilty of that. Yeah. So just be mindful. Of course, that's a whole different podcast. We can talk about what to eat and how to meal prep and all that stuff. So you kind of you talked about it here, mismanaged stress, dopamine addictions, cortisol levels, testosterone. And I think it's safe to say that in terms of manhood as a whole, the testosterone levels are becoming completely obliterated, let's just be honest. And I guess, what do you feel attributes to the low testosterone or high estrogen, or even in females the other way around, where that's affecting their ability to perform?
And it's the biggest thing you said there, cortisol. Their body, when we have a stressor come into our life, our brain has to organize what pathway it wants to send that information down so we can function. And so the body gets a signal to the hypothalamus part of the brain. It sends a communication with the pituitary, which is another gland, and then it sends a signal to the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands provide us something called cortisol, adrenaline, and DHEA. Depending upon what the stimulus is and how long it's being imposed on that individual will determine what pathway that continues to trigger to go down. And oftentimes we get the fight or flight. So fight or flight in a short term is okay, meaning like if we were to be approached by a wild animal going to attack us, we want our body to be able to adapt to that so we can get the hell out of there so we can survive. But if that's on a continuous basis and our body is sensing those things as the same response it would as a wild animal chasing us, that becomes chronic. And when that happens, it starts shutting down some of those pathways that are important for our hormone regulation, and one of them being DHEA, which does convert over to our sex hormones. That testosterone, estrogen, and the progesterone pathways have an impact. It has an impact on those pathways, and that's where we're seeing the low testosterone levels when we do blood serum testing. But unfortunately, if we don't look up far enough upstream, we don't see how the body's metabolizing these things by the experiences we're having to know how to better manage that. So a person's cortisol levels could be affected, or adrenal glands more specifically, could be impacting the downregulation of the testosterone and upregulation of the estrogen, meaning increasing the amount of estrogen and decreasing the amount of testosterone. And therefore that men turning into having more female characteristics. Then we're seeing the weight gain, the abdominal distension, we're seeing the irritability, we're seeing lack of concentration, we're seeing erectile dysfunction, we're seeing all these things occurring, and people are treating with testosterone replacement, which there is a need for that. But if we're not looking at the source and just treating the effects, that's not a good formula. It's like having a car that's not performing well and throwing high performance parts on it. That's not the right formula. Long-standing.
It's going to cause stuff to break even more.
Correct. Exactly right. Exactly.
So obviously there's a lot of stuff packed up into this wonderful brain, and the good news is you don't have to know or understand any of it. But what you do have to know and understand is there are some things that you should probably look into to be proactive about your health, so people like InJun can guide you down the right path so you can make educated decisions about your health and well-being, because everything in your life stems from your personal and mental health and well-being. And the thing that you say all the time that it just makes all the sense in the world, and it ties back into a mindset, is every single thought you have releases a chemical, right?
Absolutely.
And it never occurred to me until I started talking about you. And then we all know that, right? Sometimes you have these stressful thoughts that pop in your head. Immediately you feel it in your gut, and then your heart starts racing. So clearly there's some chemical and hormonal things going on. And also gut health. This is something that I spent almost no time thinking about before I met you. But just how everything is interconnected from your gut to your heart to your brain. I guess if you don't mind speaking on that briefly, how does gut health ultimately help with mindset and just the whole flow of, information throughout the body? I guess what stems from gut health, and why is it important to take care of your gut?
Well, I'll do my very best to be brief, because I'm not very good at being brief, so I apologize. The biggest thing is really looking at where the source of all these things that are going haywire. So there's something now called not now, but it has been now determined and being credible that there's a brain-gut axis. So your gut and your brain have a communication system. But what they found is there's more serotonin production in your gut. And that's the feel-good hormone that keeps you sane, right? There's more of that in your gut than there is in your brain. So if your gut isn't healthy, well, then how can your brain be healthy? But also, what's directing you to do the things that you're doing? Choose the foods that you're choosing. I'd rather have this controlling the ship than this. But oftentimes reverse, because once we start feeding this beast, it throws the command center off, and there can only be one person driving the bus.
That's a really succinct way of explaining that again, it makes sense. So again, it all ties in together. And again, if you talk to InJun on a one-on-one, he could take you deeper down this stuff and explain it more in depth. But of course, we have a finite amount of time. Now, I did want to bring this up. This is a test that I ended up taking, and this is where my check engine lights were going off, things that I was not aware of. And this is, me getting a little vulnerable. I'm going to share this information with you guys because I think it's important to note. So I guess, what are we looking at here? I guess, what type of test is this? And what were some of the red alerts that were going off when you were looking at the translation here?
The most valuable thing that the saliva test provides us is a simple saliva test you do at home. the most valuable information it provides me is how is your body adapting to the stress like we've been talking all along here. So what we do with this test is you have 4 saliva collections throughout a day. So we can take that saliva into the lab and see how your body's metabolizing these chemicals that you're releasing based on your thoughts you're having and the experiences you're going throughout a day. And what we're able to find out is with Dominic, we were able to find out that this chart here shows us where our normal levels should be, normal cortisol levels to function the way it's designed to. And you can see his is a very high here first thing in the morning. So first thing in the morning, he's having some things going on here that's not indicating to us his brain is actually getting the regenerative processes that should occur at night when he should be sleeping. And so if we're not able to cognitively repair and restore those things while we're sleeping at night, while we're supposed to be resting, we wake up the next morning with elevations that are what he's demonstrating. And it's causing his hormones to be off as well. So he's a very vibrant individual. You see that his energy, you can feel the energy. But the problem is, how long can he sustain that before these other organ systems start, I guess we'll use the phrase, robbing Peter to pay Paul? And then we'll start seeing things develop. Because nothing just happens. It develops one cell at a time. And so because we have this information, now we can place a better eye and put our finger on some things that are going on that are dysfunctional, leading up to the demise of other organ systems' proper function. And so with him, we were able to find out that at night he's not getting the proper mental or brain repair to go into the next day. So his levels are off first thing in the morning, and that's also affecting his DHEA levels, and it's affecting his hormone levels. And the cortisol just is not where we want to be.
So now if you have a patient like me, I'm your patient, and they completely neglect this, they say, I don't give a shit, and they just keep doing what they're doing and ignore that. What are some of the things that they could start to realize, I guess, trending in that direction?
Adrenal burnout. Yep. So when you start burning out that adrenal gland, is causing it to overwork it. It's going to cause things downstream, like his hormones are going to be affected. But he'll experience things in the rest of his overall well-being that won't necessarily be correlated to this, and they'll probably put him on some sort of medication to alter the effects that he'd be experiencing.
Yeah, and to summarize this means a shorter life if I just keep going
Correct.
down this path. So, by the way, full disclosure, before I did this test, I thought I was fine.
Well, so you understand this chart here, because there's different cortisol tests here, guys. So we did a special test on him to see in the evening time here in the waking. So cortisol levels should be highest in the morning and then transcend down. We did another additional test for him because I wanted to see during his sleeping state if he was getting into those levels of repair for his brain. So that's why this chart may look a little bit different than the other typical cortisol tests that we do. This is through a company called Dutch Plus. That's a test we did on him. But we did a little different testing, so don't be confused by the way the graph looks.
Yeah. But again, it was a very important thing for me. And again, so what's stopping you? So that's a really great question. Those of you watching this podcast, what is stopping you from taking that very first step to be proactive about your health and wellness? What is stopping you? And from your experience, what is the thing that you see that stops people from taking that first step? Just let's take a look. What is there to lose? Why are people afraid to take that first step?
Fear of change.
Fear of change.
Fear of the unknown. Because everything's working fine now, so why do you want to change anything?
Yeah.
Right, that old analogy. If it
ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, there you go, that one. Yeah, that's unfortunately is how we're led to believe, because oftentimes when we get information that's undeniable, unarguable, objective, now you're in a corner. Now you got to do something. So if I don't know, don't have to change anything and run status quo.
And it actually inspired Dr. InJun and I to come together and make a supplement stack. And I'm excited to talk about this because I firmly believe this day and age, we live in an age where through the foods that we eat, it's like dead food. There's toxins all around us. And it's very difficult for people to get the right minerals, vitamins, nutrients they need to optimize their performance through the foods. It's challenging and it's very expensive to do so. So I guess if you don't mind explaining, what is the G stack? It says the Agogi G stack. And I guess why did you formulate it to include the ingredients that it has?
The deficiencies in our soil and the way that things are prepared now, there's so much nutritional depletion. And so it's hard to find products that are whole food sourced to give us the cellular repair, or the ability to do cellular repair. And on top of that, with the genetic testing I've done, there's so many people with these conversion problems, with that methylation word I was sharing with you earlier, to convert these products into usable material. And we call it bioavailable. So they'll buy supplements, they hear something, a neighbor's taking something, say, hey, they're doing such and such, they're feeling such and such, and so I'm going to use that as well. But oftentimes we find out that those products don't have the same effect on that person. And that's what we offer. The way the program's set up for Rich Life is it personalized. It's catered just to your genetic needs, your cellular needs. So it's much different than just trying to take a product off a shelf or something you buy from a multi-level marketing company, nutritional program or something like that. So we wanted to formulate a product that would provide the right product, the raw materials that your cells require that are often deficient or devoid in our whole food choices, to make it simple for you. And then also products that are put in here that do the converting for you. So it doesn't rob your body to have to take these ingredients to convert them into usable, identical sources for your cells. So it's all the essential vitamins and minerals. We have your vitamin D in here, which actually is a hormone for those that don't know. And we pair that with vitamin K that helps with the transport of the D and helps with that being more effective. Then we have the essential fatty acids in here that you should be consuming, essential fats. People that don't like to eat the cold water fish or don't have access to cold water fish that are actually not farm raised, that are wild caught, to get the most benefit of those essential fatty acids. We have probiotics in here, the most robust probiotics on the market. So this can be at room temperature, where most probiotics that are really beneficial strains, they have to be refrigerated. So this product has the most robust ones to help colonize the stomach and the gut, the GI, to help for that and the brain to function correctly. Resveratrol, some antioxidants in here. We have NAC. We have just a lot of good things here for the brain as well. So overall health and well-being for your cells to function. This is a baseline product that we created for that sales individual, that high stress individual. And then when we do the individual personalized testing, then we can really specialize and really critique where there could be some other toxicities or deficiencies that individual patient needs.
It's absolutely phenomenal. And I got my whole family doing this. Actually, it's interesting. Our grandma, or Kelly's grandma, my wife, she lives with us. She's been living with us for 6 years, and she's diabetic and she's on all kinds of medications. I actually had her get on the G-Stack here, and she now has more energy than she's had, in the last 6 years that she's been there. It made a profound difference, because she's, balancing this drug to combat the effects of that drug. And it's just like, it strips her away of all of her energy, and she just can't even move, and she's napping. So just testimony. I'm a personal testimony to this. My family, everyone I know, I'm shouting this from the mountaintops. Whether it's supplements, personal care, just getting information, diagnosis, there's some simple things you can do, simple things you can add to your lifestyle or to your diet or to your everyday life that can help you, again, live a rich life. And making that health, that capital H, a priority, physical and mental health. It doesn't have to be a major lifestyle alteration. And if those bad things are still occurring in your life, you like a glass of wine with dinner, or you have a few cocktails every now and then, the name of the game is let's overload you with positive things, so it balances it out and supersedes the occasional toxins, because you can't avoid it. Unless you just live in an island by yourself, you grow your own food, completely organic. There's no way you could avoid all the toxins that are around. It's in the air, it's in the water, it's in the food, all around. But there's some simple things you can do to fuel your body with the positive vitamins, minerals, nutrients. So ultimately, you can function at your optimal level.
Well, let's get that cell well. Right? So then you can live a better quality of life. That's really what it comes down to. And the same thing, I've had patients before. Once we start repairing the cell and getting functioning correctly, then the prescription drugs they're using actually work more effectively. So it's really getting that cell to function the way it's designed to, and then it comes back to function.
So again, volume is for vanity, profit is for sanity, but ultimately to live a rich life, it takes more than just making more money.
Correct.
So you got to have balance, and this is why, I like the word dichotomy, but life is a big dichotomy. You got to balance everything. You're not going to rob this thing, like you said, rob Peter to pay Paul. You got to, pay close attention to each one of those pillars, like the four-legged stool, because if any of those are neglected, the whole thing falls apart, and your life, again, is only as good as this weakest link. So now, obviously, you delivered a lot of information on this podcast. I just want to thank you. You're delivering some golden nuggets for free. We're not charging for this, right? But if people want to take a deeper dive, if they want to sign up for something like this or do some testing, I guess, what's the best way to contact you?
To the website, so you can get a little background to who I am, show some credibility as well. It's DRINJUNCHONG.com, Dr. InJun Chong. Or you can email me. I'm open to have you do that. It's my last name, CHONG InJun@gmail. Be happy to answer your questions, give you some direction. Like I said, there's no charge for this. We just want to make some awareness and giving back. Because for me, that, like he said earlier, if I can help transform your life, I leave a legacy. I leave that pivotal opportunity for me, then to give it off to you, then to give it off to somebody else. And that's what life is about, I believe. That's what we're here to do.
So again, my first guest on the podcast, I couldn't ask for a better first guest because I want to, again, a wake-up call for the industry. Start paying attention to your health and wellness. Be mindful of your relationships. Really try to nurture and cherish that stuff. Leave a legacy that people will remember. And I'm going to start a brand new tradition. Our first podcast here, we got the money gun, our first guest. I'm going to give him the honors because when you live a rich life and you truly take care of your temple, it's going to equate to more money. So go ahead and shoot the money gun.
Health is wealth.
Health is wealth. Volumes for vanity, profits for sanity.
Yeah, buddy.
Woo! All right. Thank you for watching. And again, Dominic Caminata, Dr. InJun Chong, thanks for taking time out of your day. Now let's go out there and make some more profit. Let's do it. Make it happen.